Today we're going to be tying up a really simple but effective pattern. This is going to be black and red perdigon. I'm going to start out with some red thread because that's going to be the bottom half of the fly. It's going to be red colored. We'll go ahead and get that started here on our hook. Our hook is a jig size 18. I'll go this size or a little bit smaller. I've got a silver bead on the top. So let's go ahead and move back to where we want the body to begin, and then we'll move forward a little bit to tie in our first material. For the tail of the perdigon, I'm just going to turn to some Coq de Leon, one of my favorite tailing materials. This just happens to be nice speckled, kind of tan black. I'm going to grab myself a little bundle, make sure that the tips are as lined up as you can possibly get them. I'm going to go ahead and get this tied on to the top of the shank of our hook. I'll spin my thread a little bit counterclockwise just to flatten it out a little bit. That tail's too long, so I'll just grab these ends back here up at the front, and we can just pull on them until we get the length that we want. That's going to be good. So now I'm just going to travel back and lock those in at the back end of our hook. So not extremely long tail, but a little bit of a tail. Then we'll go ahead and move on forward using some of those fibers that are remaining to build up a little bit of bulk. Just come on in and clip off that CDC. Not CDC, Coq de Leon, sorry about that. And from here I'm going to just kind of work on securing those, but then going back, and we want to build in a taper. Not a significant one, but I do want it thicker moving forward. So I'll just take a couple passes up and back. We're going to whip finish here, and we'll remove the red thread and we'll transition to the black thread. So for both threads I'm using a 14 denier shear. We're going to now start our black thread right behind the bead here. I'll work that back a little bit. I want to make sure that that red is really pronounced, so I want to go back a little, but I don't want to go back way too far. So with the length of that black thread about where we want it, now I'm just going to work on bulk, especially up here behind the bead. As we put our UV resin on this, we want that resin to kind of go right over the top of that bead, giving it that classic perdigon look. So I don't want to leave much of a gap, if any of a gap, between the thread and that bead. So once we're to about right there, I'm just going to go ahead and once again grab our whip finisher. This time we'll be finished with our thread, so we'll cut it off after we're done. I'll just take a few turns here. So now I just want to coat this with this UV resin. I want to be careful about not getting it too much into those tails. And if you get excess, which I probably will have here, we'll just work on scraping that off. Make sure you get the sides as well as the bottom. You can kind of already see how much extra we have. And with that extra, I'm actually going to pull that right up and over the bead. And we'll just kind of flatten it out a little bit with getting some of that excess. Once you've got it coated the way you like it, grab your UV light I like to kind of take a quick spin around just to solidify the shell of this, and then I'm going to go ahead and harden it much more by spending a little bit more time on it. But I want to get this at least outer shell hardened just to keep that UV resin from dripping down. So at this point we're done with the fly. Flies don't have to be incredibly complicated in order to be effective, and this pattern is incredibly effective. I'll use it as a dropper on a dry fly dropper rig, so it's just kind of trailing behind my dry fly, or I may put it behind a larger nymph and trail it behind it by a foot or so, so it's going much more against the bottom. The bead on the front is going to help drop that down a little bit quicker. Wonderful fly. So throw a hook in your vise and give this one a shot.